Did we lose Rob? Rob, are you back?
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
Rob,
you.
can you mute? Awesome. Can you mute all the participants from your end?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be.
I muted you too, Daniel. 1 second, buddy. All right. Hello. Welcome. Hi, Daniel.
Hi. Okay, back with the energy. Like that was all the tech stuff.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. So,
Okay.
I do this for a living. Like, I'm a professional podcaster. I just did a podcast freaking this morning, and my equipment was solid. And then you people get onto the show and blow up my computer. It seriously, it just shut down. That's the first time that's happened. Craziness. Okay, so thank you all for your patience in the computer milieu. Really grateful for that. Hello, Daniel.
Hello. Yeah, and that's the first lesson in the architecture business is blame everyone else for your problems.
It was with honor and respect, and I'm blaming everybody else for blowing up my computer. Craziness. Okay, so welcome. My name is Rob Kandell. This is Daniel Fox. And we are here to shepherd you through these next 6 weeks of this amazing thing called architecture of business. And the first thing I want to say is really thank you. Thank you for dedicating yourselves, first and foremost, to yourself, and two, to showing up this experience just because it's magical. So, Daniel, why did you want to do this program?
So I was on a flight back. I was in the airport in Guatemala, and I was like, "Oh my God, everything's shit." And what am I doing? And so I just decided to do this. Like, I'm gonna host this thing and just tell everybody everything I know. And then, like a month later, I gathered people, like a month and a half, and I was like, "This doesn't seem in like in total alignment with me." So I reached out to Rob, and I was like, "Can you support with this? Like, do you want to be a part of this in a deeper way?" And he was like, "Let me get back to you." And then he's like, "Yes, this is in alignment with what I'm up to this year. This is totally aligned with what I'm doing." So it was kind of birthed in my brain just to give. Like, let's stop trying to sell everybody everything, and and then really put something out into the world that's going to help people. So that was the impetus. And then I think we'll definitely be giving, and I think some people will have a chance to sell and do stuff. It's both. But Rob's really taken the ball in the last month or so and made this into something far greater than I had anticipated and imagined. So thank you, sir.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And there's a couple of reasons that I wanted to do this personally. One, it was like a fun little challenge that Daniel provided for me. He's like, do you want to take this? And so where he saw it and where my mind went, and I reached out to people who I liked and respected, and they're like, yeah, I'd love to participate. So we have some incredible, knowledgeable guests coming on the show. Next week, Ariel, I think, is on the show. He's going to be talking about Money Map. The following week, it's me forecasting. And then branding and marketing person, Jen Gottlieb from Unfair Advantage, which is a program, an expensive program, but an amazing program to get you in front of the media and press. And then David Burns coming on, who is a master around psychology. So it all flowed through. And so my desire is to give back, but it's also for community. And I think this is the main reason, because I wanted to have a place for myself and others to connect. Because I think one of the hardest parts, we'll talk about this later today, is the concept that I'm doing this alone. And what do I do when I have an idea? What do I do when I have a question? And there's 34 people on the call. There's going to be another 40 or 50 people in the Facebook group. And so my desire is to create a place where all of you can talk and connect and encourage and celebrate and brag and say, I fucked up. And everyone will be like, yeah, you fucked up. And like, just to have this place, because I think the hardest part about being in business as an entrepreneur is this terminal uniqueness, this being alone aspect of the business. Yeah,
that's well put. Yeah, thank you. So
yeah.
what do you got for us today? We've got an agenda. You've got slides.
Yeah, I got a slide. Let me get it. Let me work it. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's do it this way. Share.
And I think how it's going to work today is Rob is kind of what he calls first chair,
Yes.
which means he's kind of running the show, and I'm a little bit playing guest. I think, is that a good way to
Yeah.
put it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see my screen, Daniel?
Yes, it looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. So introduction of the program, we talked about that. Who we are and who you are. I think we'll use the Facebook group and we'll go into the next step. And then we'll be talking about masculine versus / and feminine business mindsets. So that's a topic that Daniel and I will be discussing. We'll bring up the idea of conscious entrepreneurship, which will be different than I think you expect. The challenges of being a solopreneur, and then do a wrap up and final Q&A. Okay? And this is an interactive piece, so please use the chat to ask questions, or if we don't say anything, I've got my screen here and I've got my chat here, so feel free to use chat. If you have a question, plug into the chat and we'll do our best to get to it. Okay?
Got it. Cool. My chat's up too, and yeah, we're
Great.
good.
All right. So, the 6-week program, I think I talked about this. Me and Daniel, your personal money map, and we'll be going through this in the next 6 weeks. Okay. Masculine versus / and feminine business. So, I'll just start off with the concept is that most people, when they think of business, just think in terms of masculine. We've been acculturated to the concept of, in order to be in business, you have to think in masculine terms. I was watching this really interesting interview with a guy named Jordan Peterson, who some of you may know, some of you may like, some of you dislike, but I was really intrigued by him. And the interviewer was trying to get him, like trying to kill him, basically, because he's Jordan Peterson. And she was like, why aren't there more feminine-run businesses? Why aren't there more like women-run, soft, emotional businesses? And he was like, well, I don't know if it works or doesn't work, but there's no data to say if it works or doesn't work. And so in our world, we've been acculturated to think about terms in masculine-based business. Have a business, produce a business, sell, maximize profits, minimize expenses, minimize lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. And so today we want to bring up the concept of masculine versus feminine. So Daniel, your thoughts on the concept?
Yeah, so the thing about masculine business is that this marketplace, the way that things have developed, is that you go and you get a sale. You penetrate the market with an idea or a product. You don't take no for an answer. This is Wolf of Wall Street level capitalism that we're at now. And so the culture of the market is highly competitive, cutthroat, and it's about going out and getting. It's about hunting, and so there's it carries with it a lot of this masculine archetype energy. And the thing is, it can often get out of balance. It can be, it's certainly got its own set of weaknesses. It's absolutely got its set of weaknesses when it's out of balance on a global scale, where we're using resources without considering the effects and the downstream effects. But like it or not, we find ourselves in this place where the dominant culture is masculine. What do you think about that, Rob?
Well, definitely. It's the whole system is jerry-rigged from a masculine side. And so the reason we wanted to bring this up is when Daniel and I were talking about this program and we were looking at people who are signing up, there was a strong sense that the feminine needed to be represented in this mastermind, because there's a sense, our projection or our view. So if you don't identify with it, please don't think we're projecting it. But where our concept is that in the feminine, how do you balance your feminine side, which is your receiving, your soft, your emotional, your relational, with the masculine of production and producing, and I like how you said penetrating to get the sale. How do you find that balance? So we want to give you permission to bring out the feminine side in this mastermind, to discover what part of you wants to arise to create the business that really fits for you. Because I can tell you the worst thing you can do is try to create a business that's not you. Try to create a business that doesn't identify with your core values. I've done it. It sucks. You know, it is where the ulcers come from. It's where the sleepless nights comes from, is when your business is not a projection of your inner self. And so how do you allow that feminine mastery and brilliance to interact in the and with the masculine?
Yeah. So the counterpoint to that, Rob, that I want to point out is that there's a lot of, and again, regardless of whether you're in a female body or a male body, we're talking about kind of the archetypical energies of masculine and feminine. And there's a lot of judgment in the subculture that we're in against the masculine because of the results and the effects of the toxicity and the overrun and the just kind of it running over people.
Yeah.
And the judgment of the toxic or unbalanced masculine principle is actually keeping a lot of you and a lot of, and me too, it keeps us from embracing the good parts about market penetration and direct communication and really creating deliberately in a straightforward and energized way. So that's something that I would open discussion up for too. How can we balance the feminine that seems kind of innate? And I would suggest that it's by letting go of judgment of the masculine, by creating a distinction in judgment for the toxic versus just the masculine. I think I said a lot there and I'm not sure it's totally clear.
No, it makes sense. It really is. And the counterpoint to your counterpoint is, you know, the masculine is trained to dismiss the feminine. So it is a reason that a lot of our companies and a lot of our leading industries are out of whack and out of balance because they're not fully aligned with who they are. So we say this in a very hypothetical, rhetorical manner for you. In other words, we're not expecting you to come up with an answer, but we did want to introduce the topic as really important, because if you're struggling with your own ratio or balance, that's what we want you to bring to the group and to these 6 weeks. How do you find your authentic relation with your own biases? You know, maybe you have a bias against the masculine, like Daniel said. Maybe you have a bias against the feminine, which I said. Find your own balance, because you have to get them in agreement. The most powerful business happens when the masculine and feminine are in concert internally and inside your company culture.
It's so hot, man. I mean, it's so hot. And sometimes it's regulated. The feminine gets regulated to creativity, or the feminine gets regulated to HR stuff, you know, stuff dealing with people. And really the more you can get it in balance, like the more areas where that sending and receiving is active, just the hotter it becomes. And the more self-energizing and self-sustaining it becomes. You don't find yourself like, waiting for something to happen, and you don't find yourself burnt out because you're never able to receive. So the more areas that can kind of take this two-sided integration, the better off we'll be. And I do know we're in a very hypothetical, philosophical kind of realm of things. So yeah, do with that what you will.
It's true. And I have, you know, I grew up when, you know, my story was at 24, I started into the workforce. At 26, I was in corporate America, you know, working 70 hours a week for a finance firm, totally masculine. Drive, pressure, results. And then what happened to me is that my body said, if you're not going to take a break, I'm going to take a break for you. And so I got into a bicycle accident, broke my collarbone, had a major concussion, laying in bed the next day, and they're calling me for help. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is not the way I want to live. And then in my next step of my career, I worked for a total feminine-based business, a business called One Taste, that was run by a very powerful woman with a very feminine way of building business. And we didn't make money for the first 8 years, okay? Which is not easy when you're building a business to not make any money for 8 years and depending on investment. And then what happened is we found the balance in year 8 of the masculine and the feminine. Not saying we did it pristine. We actually made lots of mistakes. So I'm not trying to paint a picture that it was all, unicorns and roses when we hit that point. But we turned it from 8 years in the red to an 8-figure international business in 4 years after hitting that balance. Mm. So my point is that, what we're trying to get across is we want you to honor both parts in yourself to figure out how to get to the next level.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a similar, well, it's like kind of the flip side of that coin is that I started the biggest business that I run. It was an online t-shirt printing company. And it took a couple of years to get to that profitability point. But because it was e-commerce, the nature of the sales that we did were that people were drawn to purchase. So I came out of that business not knowing how to sell, not really knowing how to penetrate the market. We were just in a place where people were kind of coming to us. It was a very feminine way of selling, and it was a very, very passive in a lot of senses. And so, it was just kind of there wasn't anything masculine or feminine about the nature of selling t-shirts. But the way that I had done it in that business wasn't that I did a lot of advertising or put a lot out there. It was very much like a SEO, search engine optimization. People were finding and purchasing. I didn't have to convince anybody. I didn't have to go out and sell anything. And so that's been a major part of how I built that business too.
Great. Okay, so we don't want to belabor this point too much. Please start your thoughts and your conversations. We'll be talking about this during the 6 weeks, and please use the Facebook group to continue the conversation. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so some of you might have heard the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim Ferriss, an amazing man. Had the pleasure of teaching him at one point about our practice. And I want to tell you, this 4-hour workweek is a myth. Many of us want to be our own boss, to have our little laptop on the beach, which is not very good for your laptop, by the way. And I can tell you, this doesn't happen. I've been a solopreneur since I left One Taste in 2014. And I do have a good life-work balance, but I've never worked a 4-hour work week since I started. So this is about, if you're looking to create a business and only work 4 hours a week, you have to be that 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000 to find it, to build the business. And so I want to make sure you set the expectation that if you want to build your business, this is going to be a journey. Now, for me personally, I draw deep pleasure from the process of building a business. It really is my practice. It's my art. It's my creativity, but it's been a lot of hard work, and it continues to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I giggled when this slide came up. It's just so not, I don't know anybody that is in this spot or necessarily wants to be. Like, if you're going to start something that's aligned with your purpose and that you're passionate about, you're going to want to put more than 4 hours in, and you're going to. It's just the nature of what's up. But I love working. I love being able to create things. I'm seeing a question pop up. Can it be portable, something you could do in different locations? That's the thing that really gets me jazzed. I mean, so we talk about 4-hour work week. I think what is actually possible is the anywhere around the world work week. Like, I'll work, I'm happy to work 12-hour days, but let me do it from Denver one day and then New York the next week. And Rob, I know you travel a bit too for your business. So how's that working?
It's great. I mean, really, the technology. I mean, look at Zoom. I saw someone pop in from Denmark before my computer exploded. But like, this really is an international thing. We have the tools and technology to be able to travel. So my office is my laptop. That's what I say, and I can move from place to place. So yes, like the old days, unless you have a brick and mortar business, an actual physical location, there is portability in the world today.
Yeah. Phoenix says, anybody who's only committed to their purpose for 4 hours a week probably hasn't found their purpose. That's
Indeed.
a really clever point.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on. All right. So what is conscious in terms of conscious entrepreneurship? Conscious is you actually know what you're getting yourself into, and most people don't. So when I've been running a consulting business for 4 years, I've probably helped 70 or 80 entrepreneurs at this point in the 4 years. And a lot of them, I'm trying to convince them not to go into entrepreneurship. I'm actually saying, are you sure this is what you want to do? And so most of them are like, yes, this is what I want to do. But the first step is really to know what the F you're getting yourself into. Because unlike working for someone, which has its pros and cons, when you're running your own business, when you're being an entrepreneur, it's good to get into the mindset to know what you're taking on, both for yourself, but if you have a family, for friends, for your finances. So conscious is taking the steps into building the foundation. That's what architecture of business is for me. It's the just opening our eyes wide enough, giving you guys enough real life examples so you can make a conscious decision to say, I do want to do this. And if I do want to do this, what's it going to take to ensure that I'm not going to fuck up my life when I do it? That's really the foundation. From there, the sky's the limit. Like, I've seen so many successful businesses from people passion, but we want to add a level of consciousness so you know what the impact will be in your life.
Yeah. What's popping up is I want to validate the side hustle. I want to validate somebody who's doing a side hustle for a long time and maybe doesn't even have an intention to turn it into something that is going to replace their income. That's a totally legitimate place to be. And I don't want to do it for myself, but if you are, and if you really like the stability of a full-time gig and you want to pursue something and not have to be dependent on it, it's a legitimate route to go.
Right. One of my peers likes talking about money projects versus sexy projects. And so I'll bring up this concept now. The money project is the thing that pays your bills. It's the thing you pay your rent, your food, your child, food, support, et cetera, et cetera. Your money project is the one that brings you your money. Your sexy project is what feeds your soul. It's the thing that really turns you on. It's the one that you feel your purpose and you're alive in. If you have too much money project, your soul dies. If you have too much sexy project, you tend to lose your house and start to live under a bridge, right? So the balance is knowing what's the ratio of your money project to your sexy project. At some point, your sexy project can become your money project. So it's just important to know that. It's not like you always have to have these two distinctions. They can merge into one. But the work we're going to do is going to say, how much money project do I need to do to ensure I have the foundation to live in my sexy project? If you're not paying enough here, then you're stressed. And we'll talk about this in a second, but the worst you can do is that when you're selling your product or selling your services to pay your rent and you're scared. To sell from scarcity, which I'm sure a lot of you have hit in different people in your lives, is the worst thing to do, because at that point, you might lose the sense of your integrity to make the sale to pay your bills. So we're going to talk a lot about, so to Daniel's point, have a full-time job or a part-time job to pay your bills. And maybe in the beginning, you're working on your sexy project 5 hours a week. And then maybe you can bump it up to 10. And maybe at some point it can become your full-time gig. We want to give you the awareness to make conscious decisions to keep you solid.
Yeah. Selling from scarcity is not only tempts you to sell out your integrity, it also, people feel it. People feel the energy of you being scared and they don't want to buy from you. And what happens when you try to sell when you're scared and then somebody doesn't buy is that you just get discouraged and you get even more scared, and it's a downward spiral. So really having a good buffer is an amazing sales tool for your own mindset, for your own energy standpoint, and of course, to Rob's point, for your integrity.
Great. In the chat, Una says, I won't separate them. I understand the concept. So Una, would you do us a favor? Would you post about how you perceive your side to add to the conversation on the Facebook group? Because I'm curious about how you won't separate them. I think that'd be a really great thing to do. Okay. Emil says, a coach told me in order to find success in your business, there's ideas of closing back doors, that this energetics would actually bring power to the sexy project. Hope that wasn't one of my colleagues. I would debate with that person. No, go ahead, Daniel.
Well, the concept is almost burn the boats. I've told people to burn the boats before, but I'm like, this is, it's different medicine for different people at different times. There's somebody who needs to burn the boats, and there's somebody who needs to count the costs and go slowly and not quit their day job. So aside from a whole blanket, it's not blanket advice for everybody. If you're in a place where you're hesitant and you have the resources, then burn the boats. If you're in a place where you're going to be sloppy about finances and your idea is unproven and you're not tested, then go slow. I wouldn't say there's a blanket thing for everybody here. Both are true in different cases.
Right. And just be sure. So, for me, and we'll talk about this in week 2, is to know your minimum money requirement per month for the year. If your sexy project can provide that for you, then there's a decision to close that back door. It's a conscious decision. But a lot of people I've noticed in the entrepreneur world and coaches are saying, well, if you're at half your money requirement, quit to close the back door. I just feel it's a dangerous thing to do. And so to me, the question, I think Mark asked, like, how do you know when? It's when you can feel confident that your project, your business can provide for you and your family. And until then, unless you have a runway meaning another source of income, an investment, a savings account, maybe even a business loan that's manageable, I would just add a lot of consciousness into when to make that decision.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Some of these questions are kind of what we addressed. Chris says the extreme version of that is quit the day job to light a fire under my ass. Is that a good idea? Case by case, but I guess what Rob is saying is count your runway. How much money do you have that can get you how far? And then we're going to calculate how much you can build, how much market you can penetrate, how much you can money you can start bringing in for your sexy project or your entrepreneurship. And is your runway going to get you to that time? Listen, if you've got a motivation problem, deal with your motivation problem. Don't deal with it directly. Don't go circuitously and screw yourself because you can't motivate yourself. Like, learn how to motivate yourself directly. Learn what it takes to feed your diet, what you need, and to get accountability and to work your body in a way that's going to directly motivate you. Don't go some jackass backdoor way to try to get yourself motivated and then you just end up screwing yourself over in the end. That's going to help nobody.
Right. And you don't have to answer this question for yourself today, because this is really the goal of the project, of this mastermind. Like I said, week 2 is to figure out your money you need to live. Week 3 is how to build a business forecast. And then week 4, 5, and 6 is all about how to bring it out into market, the real basics for it. Do I think this mastermind is going to solve all your problems? No, I wish it could. But will start to bring up those questions inside of you to investigate? And will there be other opportunities to work with these amazing people coming on there? Yes. But really, we would just want to add consciousness so you can it's pleasurable. We want your businesses to be pleasurable. Michelle talked about how she spent 3 years burning the boats and trying to work from scarcity. Now she has a part-time job to pay her bills and working on making financial amends where I feel integrity. That's exactly what we're talking about. And that part-time job could be 15, 20 hours. We're not saying sell your soul to corporate America. We're saying find the balance, find the conscious balance.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide because it says exactly what that means. Okay, so these are what I recommend to my clients for keys for success. To know if your concept, your sexy project is something that can make it in the market. The first is a realistic understanding of your industry. So we live in an information-rich society. We have Google. There is no excuse for you saying, I don't know how to find out about my industry. There's always ways to do it. There's always ways to find it. And here's the secret I like to tell people. If you're interested in getting to a type of a business, contact people doing it and ask for help. Like if there's someone you see running a nail salon that you think is really top notch, it's organic, it's magical, et cetera, go into that nail salon and say, hey, can I take you out to lunch to pick your brain? Can we go out for a cup of coffee? Can I sit and watch? Most people think that they'll be competitive and say no. It's actually the opposite, because people who are successful in business tend to love to talk about it. And so do some research, go out and reach out. I just talked to someone yesterday about how I did my book process and the trials and tribulations. This Indiegogo campaign rocked. This one totally died. All the reasons of how I did it. And so you'd be amazed. So if you're interested in investigating, go and research your industry.
I want to talk really quick about your industry. A lot of people who are getting into their own deal are merging two ideas together. And so this is what I had when I was like, I'm printing t-shirts on demand. It's not this and it's not that. And I didn't consider myself in an industry for a long time. And I could have done much better if I just said, okay, this is close enough to this industry. My idea is close enough to this business model that I need to research how people are doing it here and learn from that. So if you have this idea that what you're offering doesn't fit in an industry, or you're outside of an industry, just let that go for a second, because you can learn a lot from finding what the industry is normally called and then going and researching how people are doing that specific thing.
And to another point is, use the Facebook group to start talking about your industry and saying, what do you think? Like, my dream for this group is that you guys are chatty Cathys. Like, we're a lot more interesting than talking about politics or, of course it's fun. Sexuality, well, you guys will talk about sex. That's the way it is. But hopefully it's like this group becomes interesting because you're sharing ideas and knowledge, passing things back and forth. Someone saying, do you know someone in this industry or that industry? Maybe there's some connections that can be created, or ideas. Like, you can create one thread for each other to take you to the next level. And that, to me, I think is the beauty of what this mastermind I want it to be. Okay.
Beautiful.
So the second thing is a business plan. And in week 3, I'll be talking more about a business plan. And for some of you, a business plan may send into your soul. Like, you could feel like, I don't know how to do a business plan. The business plan I'm talking about is not the 100-page document you might have seen in a movie or read about. It's actually a business plan for you. And that business plan doesn't have to be for a bank, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some parts that have numbers, but really it's a way to take the ideas of your head and get them down into a format that will codify it. We'll take it out of the possible into the more concrete. So this is something we'll be talking about in week 3. Okay. Keys for success number 3 is enough cash for an appropriate runway. Okay. So I use these words deliberately. Enough cash. So cash can mean a credit card. but it's better if it's cash than credit because you're paying for credit. Appropriate. What's the appropriate runway for what you want to do? I did not expect OneTaste to require an 8-year runway. That's really because we didn't do a business plan, to be transparent. I learned my lesson. But what's it going to take for you to have enough money to be healthy in the process? And we've already talked about this point pretty deeply, but it's enough cash so you're not in scarcity.
Yep.
The right foundation, also known as a support team. And what that is the first hire, my mentor said, the first hire is always a bookkeeper, right? It's not necessarily a branding person. It's not necessarily a marketing person. It's someone who can help you with your books. Now, that was right for me. It might not be right for you, but it's what do you need to feel support? That could be this mastermind. This could be a group of friends that you talk to. It could be a gender-based group where you go to every week or every other week and complain about your business, and they're the ones say, "God, get back in the field. You're doing great. You'll handle it." So it's really getting down to who do you need to feel supported on this grand adventure. Okay. Any thoughts, Daniel?
Nope. All sounds good.
Okay. Point number 5 is what happens if it all goes wrong? What happens if your idea is not such a good idea? What happens if your partner gets sick and you can't put attention on it? What do you do if the market changes? You know, we're in this really incredible growth market for the last 18 months. And if you look at the overall trends since 2008, we've been on this huge upscale in terms of expansion, ups and downs along the way, but really an overall. What happens if a recession hits? Is your product recession proof or recession resistant? So, this is something I worry about because my business is based on other entrepreneurs. And if their business goes to tank, well, guess what? I lose my clients. So it's something in my mind. I'm paying attention to what's happening in the world so I can have plans. I have savings, right? So I work very hard to make sure that some of my money pays my taxes and the rest goes to savings. It's what do you do? What happens if something goes wrong?
Yeah. This is it's really tempting for a lot of the people that are gathered here that we brought together to think that mindset or spirituality is going to be the answer to what happens if something goes wrong. And I think that there's some truth to that, but more so what we're doing here is stepping into a game with specific rules and specific consequences for not preparing for those rules. And so we could look at everything that we've said so far today and be like, well, yeah, but I'm just going to wake up in the morning and put on Abraham Hicks and dance around and then imagine myself as a millionaire. And then it's going to come. Well, do that. That's awesome. But that's the mindset tip of this iceberg. And there's a whole, that flows out into action, that flows out into being wise, into getting support, into making sure you have enough cash and a business plan. These are all of the outgrowths or the outcrops of having yourself aligned energetically and mindset wise.
Great. Okay. And the last is patience and intestinal fortitude. And what this means is you're buckling up for the roller coaster, you're putting down the guardrail, you're going on the ride, and it's just going to be a ride. Like, there are some of you that can have a clean, pristine ride with no mud, no shiners, no broken bones, and for some of you will. So really, it's having patience and intestinal fortitude to believe in yourself and believe in your product. And like I said, OneTaste took 8 long years of belief. And along the way, we wanted to quit. But we kept going. And then from that, we went through the dip, Seth Godin's dip, and then took us to the next level. So patience and intestinal fortitude.
Werner Erhard has a quote that I love. It says, "It doesn't get better, it gets better and it gets worse, and it gets better and it gets worse." So strap in.
Exactly. Okay. To my good friend Tony Robbins. We'll be using some Tony Robbins. I went to Business Mastery with him in January 2014, and it really impacted me. I'm sure everyone has a different viewpoint of Tony, but I do love this quote that I use over and over. The success of the business is based on the psychology of the owner. The success of the business is based on the psychology of the owner. And what this means is when you, as the owner, are in an expansive state, in an open state, your business will tend to rise up and open. And when you're in a contracted, scarce, straitjacket kind of place, your business will tend to shrink. And it sucks, but this happens over and over again, right? This is something I've seen in company. So a lot of entrepreneurs will come to me thinking I'm going to help them build a forecast or balance their books, and we're just working on their psychology. Where are they not believing in themselves? Where are they mad? Where are they unconsciously self-sabotaging? These are things that we're going to be talking a lot, especially in week 6 with Dave, about your psychology and how these little things in your mind. I was working with a client. She was a queen. That's the way I described her. Everything about her shouted queen. But after a year of running her own business, she kept hitting a ceiling where she couldn't get above. And so we did some deep work, and we found out that if she made $1 more than when she was making, she was going to make the most money in her family, her nuclear family's history. So let's just say it's $1,000 is what her family's always made. She was going to make 1,001, and as soon as she crossed that line, she had fear of abandonment of her nuclear family because she was making more money than them. Now, was this based in any reality? I don't know. But once we found out this piece of her psychology stopping her, self-sabotaging herself, we broke through that. Then she's got to 1x, 2x, 3x of that initial number. So your psychology, where you believe in yourself. So we're not saying, don't feel sad, or we're not trying to squash down your feelings. We're saying if you have fear or something going in your system, pay attention to it. Work on it with a coach or with a peer. Use 12-step programs. Use whatever you have to work on your psychology, because if you're in a contracted place, your business will diminish. I've seen it time and time again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, personally been through that a couple times. And it cycles. So don't feel like if you're in a contracted place and the diminishing is wrong, reach out for support. Self-care, ask for support, Mark says. Yes.
Yep, exactly. Okay. And finally, I think this is the last slide. Yeah. The most common roadblock. You're going to have to sell either yourself or a product that you have designed or a service that you provide. Without sales, your business dies. And it's no piece of cake to sell, especially ourselves, because of our psychology. So if you have challenges selling, this is something that we want you to look at. And again, week 6, Dave Burns is an amazing salesperson with so much confidence, so much belief in himself. And I know he'll tell some stories about how he up-leveled his business. But the concept of selling is something that fills a lot of people with fear. But if you're not willing to sell, to put yourself out there, to feel into it, then you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And if you want a hobby, that's great, but don't call it a business. Don't confuse yourself. Don't do that to your self-esteem. Find the balance. And let's talk about the S word, the selling word, so you guys can all have businesses that provide services where you receive compensation for your sales.
Selling is so a couple things I'll address. This may be, again, my projection, but I think selling is so, people are so afraid of it because it feels so confronting that when they get bored with feeling afraid, they start judging sales as bad. And so there could be a couple levels of resistance to learning how to sell and to actually getting out there and selling. And you could have very elaborate socioeconomic reasons about why you won't sell, because it hurts the planet and you're manipulating people and all of that stuff. I postulate that underneath that, you're just covering up your own discomfort. And so I would say that the runway up to week 5 is to look at your resistance to selling and to clear as much judgment of that as possible, so we can actually make a difference here. Point number 2 is when you learn how to sell something and you're in that flow, you can sell anything. You can sell yourself, and this is the skill that will make sure that your family never goes hungry.
Yep. And Jessica wrote, I prefer the term enrolling over selling. Great. If that's what fits your modus operandi, if that's what fits your system, I'm 100% supporter of that, whatever word. But make sure there's compensation involved with whatever word you come up with. Flirting is fun, but can you have cash for flirting? Well, it depends on what industry you're in. But the point is make sure you have the word that includes compensation.
I have not had a lot of success getting cash for flirting.
You tried.
I've tried. I've certainly tried.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. I want to just finish this one section with a personal story around this. Is when I left One Taste, I had so much baggage. I actually had PTSD from that experience that I was selling my services at $150 an hour. You know, I've been in the business at that point 16 years, and I was selling myself at $150 an hour because I had baggage. I had things inside of me that was so minimizing myself. I was trying to make up for something. And through a lot of therapy and some plant medicine, I've evolved into the proper level of who I am. And now I feel really good about the number that I work with, and we can talk about that later. The point is that it hits all of us, and your willingness to look at it, my willingness to look at it, has up-leveled my business to appropriate for my skill set.
Yeah. So similarly, when I experienced failure in my business, I had no idea where I fit. I was like, do I just get a job at Starbucks? Like, what am I good for? And that PTSD in the face of business failure can be a real thing for you, but it's not a real thing outside of it. It's all just story. It's all mental and embodied, story.
Yep. Okay. So we have 10 minutes, and we want to open up the floor for questions. So we asked that we're now looking for a lot of backstory in your question. Just kind of get to the meat of it. And if we need more information, we'll ask. So you can unmute yourself, and then if you have a question, let's hear it. Just go ahead, I think Mark, go ahead.
What's the most common mistake people make in a business plan?
My experience of that is not taking the time to do it. There's 2 things. One is not taking the time to do it. 2, thinking it's a static document. A business plan to me is an evolution. My business today is very different from when I started in July of 2014. It's an evolution. So one is not putting enough energy into it. Like, to me, another way of looking at business plan, it's a love letter to yourself. It's sort of like you're romancing yourself to get yourself on board, to get your ass off of Facebook and to do your business, right? So it's a soliloquy. It's a Shakespearean drama to intrigue you. And then when someone comes up to you and say, what do you do? Well, this is what I do. So really not putting enough energy, quitting on your business plan, to me is the number one thing with it.
I've got 2 things that are maybe, I would put them as secondary to what Rob said. One is, don't try to combine 2 businesses into one unless you're for sure got it nailed down. But this whole I don't know how many pitches I've heard for a hookah bar and a massage place, or you think that we're gonna, this idea that you find a space that just opened up in your city and you want to go put something in there. I don't know. A lot of us are service providers, so it doesn't necessarily ring that way. But we think that we're going to mitigate the risk by putting two businesses together, when in fact it's the opposite. You actually double the risk because you have to split your attention between two businesses now, instead of just focusing and going whole hog on one. The second, probably more important mistake I see people making in their business model is sticking to it like it is a document, and not being willing to pivot when you get information that it is time to pivot. When you learn that there's already a market dominator out there who has technology or intellectual property that you cannot reproduce, and you maybe can't compete, it behooves you to take that seriously and to find a way to pivot in your industry, or out of the industry, or to a different product, or find a different revenue stream with that same product or service. So pivot, pivot, pivot.
Jessica Ellis says, business polyamory. Right on.
Oh yeah, right. The hookah bar / baklava.
Yeah. Make sure your agreements are in safe. All right. Thank you, Mark, for a great question. Do we have another question on the floor? Just unmute yourself and start speaking. They might be full, Daniel.
Could be. I'm curious who doesn't know their next steps right now?
Does know their next steps in their business?
Does not know what their next steps are. Just if you don't know what you're to do next, just unmute yourself and volunteer yourself with that.
It's a good question.
It's not that I don't know what exactly the next one is. There's a bunch of them. How do I know which one is the next one?
Okay.
Great.
Cool. Where are you right now? What's going on?
I don't have a business plan.
Okay.
I have a pretty good ramp savings set up, and I'm working on how to market myself, how to sell.
Beautiful. Rob, what would you say to somebody who's in Mark's position?
Business plan.
Business plan. All right.
Yeah. Let me give you the elements of the business plan just so we can take some mystery out of it. So a business plan starts off with an executive, and we'll talk about this. So starts off with an executive summary. This is a one-pager that you know what your business is. And more importantly, if someone comes up to you, what do you do? How can I help you? I'm an angel investor. I want to give you $1 million. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? You have it nailed. You know, I do this, this, and this. This is the service I provide. This is the pain I'm solving. It's the executive summary. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is the products you're selling, what you sell. Three is how you're going to market those pieces. Four is competitive analysis. Five is a forecast, numbers, a spreadsheet. Ooh, spreadsheets. It's a spreadsheet. We'll go over how to do that in week 3. And then 6 is an exit strategy. What's going to happen? Am I going to do this for 10 years? Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Just writing it down. So again, this isn't like, you know, some macroeconomics form. It's a love letter to yourself that you know what you're doing. So I want to just put it in that feeling. So Mark, if you want to start, if you guys want to jump ahead, you know, work on that one-page business executive summary. Maybe we should come up with another name that's not executive summary, because that sounds kind of formal and stiff.
What are the elements of an executive summary?
It's really just if someone came up to you and said, what do? You have utter pristine clarity to describe it. We're not talking like I help people, or I'm solving world peace, or I like, you know, coaching people. No, that's not an executive summary, or, you know, a summary, whatever we'll call it. It's a pristine, electric, connected, clear description of what you do. Number 6 is the exit strategy. Like, I want to sell my business in 10 years. Okay, great. Let's set up your business to sell your 10 years. I want to do this for 5 years until my kids leave the house, and then I can take the revenue and you know, go to Bali, where everyone else is going these days. Like, et cetera, et cetera. It's what you plan to do.
Yeah, the exit strategy is really key. I didn't think when I started my first business that that was going to be an important part. You have to know how and when you want to get out of it, because there's so many. There's just so many end compensation goals that you can't make proper calculations in the life of the business if you don't have really something that you're working toward, a concrete way to move out of it, to retire from it, to put it to bed. Do you want to wind it down? Do you want to end it in bankruptcy? Like, because if you don't plan something, some of those are options that maybe aren't the things that you want to happen.
Yep.
I was taking notes, and I counted 5 elements. What happened after competitive and before strategy?
Forecast, money spreadsheet.
Got it.
In week 3, and then exit strategy is 6.
Got it.
Someone asked if this will be available for replay. Yes, I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and then as a private setting, and then we'll pop the link inside the Facebook group, hopefully by tomorrow.
Yeah, Sarah asked how do you know if someone has the name of your business? There's a U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO.gov. I believe you can Google that and then search if anybody has the copyright for that name in your industry. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an intellectual property lawyer. I have been through the ringer of intellectual property law for sure. But USPTO is the first place you'd start. Obviously, we can Google things these days much faster to check if somebody has the name for your business than we could 30 years ago.
And please ask that question again so we can post on Facebook. There's a lot more information that I like to share with you, my experience. So someone remember to do that, please. And yes, you can have access to these slides. I will figure out the easiest way to do that. All right, folks. Well, that was our hour. We like to be the trains to run on time because I run masculine-based business with a flavor of feminine. So we'll close here. I want to say thank you so much. This is the first iteration of the Daniel and Rob show. So please, any feedback of what we could have done better, and we're always open to you, and really grateful for everyone coming on here, and look forward to seeing you on Facebook. Anybody?
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'll see you in the group.
All right. Take care.